At Christmas dinner, my son slammed his hand on the table so hard the wine glasses jumped. "I wish you weren't here, Mom!" The words hit like a slap. Nobody moved. My granddaughter froze. My daughter-in-law stared down at her plate. Even the music stopped. I looked at him, still holding my fork. "Say that again." He leaned forward, face red. "You heard me. You ruin every holiday with your judgment and your rules. You treat this house like it's still yours. It's not. You're not welcome here anymore." "Well," I said. "Merry Christmas, Andrew. Wish granted." Heather blinked, not sure if she'd heard me right. Andrew's jaw tightened, the kind of tightness that comes when a bully realizes his punch didn't land. I stood up. My chair scraped against the marble floor, the sound crisp and deliberate. Every movement was slow, measured, precise. Control has a sound. It's quieter than anger, colder than silence. "You don't have to see me again," I told him. "But you will remember this meal for the rest of your life." He laughed, short and bitter. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means," I said, straightening my napkin, "you just made sure this will be your last Christmas in this house." Heather gasped. "Catherine, please, he didn't mean—" I looked at her, just once. "You've had 10 years to teach him manners, Heather. You failed." Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. She reached for Andrew's arm. He shrugged her off. He thought he'd won. He thought his outburst ended something. He didn't realize it had only just begun. The candles flickered as I pushed my chair back into place, perfectly aligned with the table. The habit of order never leaves you. It's what built my bakery, what raised my children, what kept me standing long after my husband died. "Enjoy your meal," I said. "Dinner's on me, literally. You're welcome." Then I turned and walked toward the door. Each step echoed across the tiled floor. Behind me, no one moved. The only sound was the quiet drip of wine from an overturned glass, staining the white tablecloth like a wound. When I reached the foyer, I picked up my coat. My reflection caught in the mirror by the door. A woman of 67, calm, composed, wearing the face of someone who had just been cut open but refused to bleed. Sophie's voice broke the silence. "Grandma, where are you going?" I turned to her and softened my tone. "Don't worry, sweetheart. Grandma's just going to make sure everyone gets exactly what they wished for." She didn't understand. Not yet. But one day she would. Children always learn who tells the truth when the house finally goes quiet. Andrew's voice came from behind me. "You can't just walk out, Mom." I opened the front door. The cold air swept in, swirling through the warmth of the room like a ghost. I didn't look back. "I already did," I said, and closed the door behind me. The sky outside was dark velvet, and snow had started to fall, soft and soundless. The kind of snow that buries tracks before anyone notices where you went. I stood on the porch, my breath turning white in the air. Inside, I could still hear them arguing. Heather whispering frantically, Andrew pacing, Sophie crying. The same house that once smelled of cinnamon and sugar from my bakery days now smelled like burnt pride. I walked to my car, parked under the oak tree. The same tree my husband planted the year Andrew was born. The irony didn't escape me. He planted life. His son had just tried to uproot it. I started the engine, the headlights cutting through the snow. For a second, I just sat there staring at the house. Every light was still on, every shadow still moving. That was the moment I decided, not to cry, not to fight, to act. I reached into my purse, pulled out my phone, and opened my contact list. Martin Cole, the only man I still trusted to move faster than pain. My thumb hovered over the call button. Not yet. Not tonight. Revenge needs precision, not heat. I put the phone down, shifted the car into drive, and whispered to myself, "You wanted peace, Andrew. I'll give it to you, in every legal sense of the word." The tires crunched over the gravel as I drove away. The Christmas lights on the porch blurred in my rearview mirror, melting into streaks of red and gold. Somewhere behind those lights sat a son who had just declared war without knowing his opponent had already won. The road stretched ahead, empty and cold. I didn't feel angry. I felt awake, alive. Heather lifted her glass like nothing had happened. She smiled at no one, pretending her husband hadn't just told me to disappear. I turned back to the table. "You can keep the leftovers," I said. "I'm done feeding parasites." The words dropped heavier than the silver forks on the table. Andrew's face twisted. "Excuse me?" "You heard me." My voice stayed calm. "Every meal, every loan, every favor. You've taken it all and called it love. I'm done pretending that's family." Heather set her glass down too fast. Red wine ran over her fingers. "Catherine, let's calm down." "Calm?" I looked at her. "You've lived off me for 10 years and still managed to look surprised when the bill shows up." Andrew pushed his chair back. "You think you're better than us?" "No," I said. "I just know what I'm worth." He stood, the chair legs screeching against the floor. "You can't talk to me like this." I stepped closer. "I just did." The room went still. The smell of wine, the sharp hiss of the candles, the heavy silence. Everything hung in the air like judgment. Heather whispered to him, "Sit down, Andrew." But he didn't move. He just stared at me, breathing through his teeth, shaking with rage. I leaned forward slightly, eyes level with his. "You don't raise wolves to hear them bark." He blinked. "What?" "You'll understand soon enough." His chair tipped, slammed backward. The wine glass fell and shattered. Red spilled across the white tablecloth, crawling toward the plates like blood chasing guilt. Heather gasped. I didn't. "That stain?" I said. "That's yours. You made it." No one spoke. The silence was cleaner than anything they had left to say. I picked up my coat from the back of my chair. The sleeve brushed the table. One drop of red touched the fabric, but I didn't wipe it. I let it stay. A reminder. At the doorway, I stopped and turned. "Dinner's on me," I said. "Literally. You're welcome." Andrew's voice cracked behind me. "Mom, what are you doing?" I faced him one last time. "Ending the free meal." Then I walked out. The door clicked shut behind me. The sound was soft, but in that room full of silence and spilled wine, it might as well have been a verdict. Andrew shoved his chair so hard it hit the wall behind him. The crash echoed through the dining room. Heather jumped to her feet, stepping between us like she was saving him from me. "Stop it, both of you!" she shouted. I didn't move. "I can speak to your wife, Andrew. She's eaten off my plate for 10 years. She can hear me just fine." Heather froze. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. I looked at her directly. "You liked the vacations, the checks, the gifts, didn't you? You smiled, called me Mom, and cashed every favor. Now you're quiet. Why?" She whispered, "Because you're being cruel." "No," I said. "I'm being honest. Cruel is living off someone and pretending you earned it." Andrew stepped around her, face red. "You've done enough, Mom." "Clearly not," I replied. "You still think I owe you something." He slammed his hand on the table. The candle toppled, spilling wax. The smell of smoke rose fast. I took a step closer. "You don't raise wolves to hear them bark," I said softly. "You raise them to learn who bites first." Heather looked at him like she was seeing him for the first time. Fear, not loyalty, filled her eyes. The chair he'd thrown lay broken on the floor, one leg twisted. The sound of it cracking still hung in the air, hollow, final. I grabbed my purse, straightened my jacket, and walked toward the door. Behind me, Andrew shouted, "You walk out that door! Don't come back!" I didn't even turn around. That's the idea. I didn't sleep that night. The echo of the chair hitting the floor still rang in my ears. I didn't cry, didn't shout, didn't drink. I just waited until the house went quiet, until there was nothing left but the sound of the clock and my own heartbeat. At midnight, I turned on the lamp. The soft green light filled the room, cold and clean. My husband's old safe sat in the corner, the one he bought when we opened the bakery. It had been sealed for years. Tonight, it opened with one twist of the dial. The lock clicked. Inside, documents, deeds, shares, and one envelope marked Lake Residence. My name was still on every line, every signature, every dollar. I spread the papers across the desk. No hesitation, no second thoughts, just decisions. I picked up the phone and dialed a number I'd memorized 20 years ago. Martin answered on the second ring, his voice still rough with sleep. "Catherine, it's midnight. What happened?" "I'm selling the house," I said. He went silent for a second. "Tonight?" "Yes." "That fast?" "Speed kills regret." There was a pause, then the sound of rustling papers on his end. "All right, I'll draft the transfer authorization. You'll need to sign and scan before 1 a.m. "I'm ready." I took out a pen, the same one I used when I signed the bakery's first contract. The ink still flowed smooth and dark. Martin's voice steadied. "You sure about this?" "I built it," I said. "I'll burn it if I must." He exhaled through the receiver. "Then let's do it right." The printer whirred. The pages slid out one by one, warm under my fingers. I signed every line, firm, fast, clean. No tremor, no mercy. When I was done, I scanned the file and sent it to his private inbox. Martin texted seconds later, "Received. Consider it done." I leaned back in the chair. The light flickered once, the green reflection bouncing off the metal safe. The same safe that once protected my family was now helping me end it. Outside, the wind picked up. The house creaked like it knew something was changing. I closed the safe, turned off the lamp, and whispered, "Peace doesn't come cheap." Then I picked up the signed copies, placed them in a folder, and slid them into my bag. The house was silent, the kind of silence that follows a storm. I sat at my desk, laptop open, screen glowing cold blue against the dark. My reflection stared back from the glass. Tired eyes, steady hands. I wasn't angry anymore. I was operational. Martin's email sat at the top of the inbox. Subject line, "Property Sale Agreement, Magnolia Residence." I opened it. 6 pages. My name at the top, his signature already in place at the bottom. I scrolled once, twice. I didn't need to read it again. I knew the layout of every wall in this house. I knew where to pull the first brick. The digital pen waited beside the keyboard. I plugged it in, opened the signature field, and let my hand hover over the mouse. I said it out loud, quietly, just for myself. They had dinner. I had decisions. Click. My signature appeared. Catherine Lake. Bold. Final. A notification blinked in the corner of the screen. Martin. "All signed? You sure about the immediate effect?" I typed back, "Yes." Then I added 3 more words in the message window. Effective immediately, 3 words, simple, surgical, the kind that cuts cleaner than shouting ever could. I hit send. The email left the screen with a soft whoosh that sounded like a door closing. For a moment I sat still. The glow from the monitor made everything look sterile, almost holy. I thought of Andrew's face at the table, how he shouted, how Heather looked proud to let him. Somewhere down the hall, their lights were still off. They were sleeping, dreaming, unbothered. By sunrise, that dream would break. I opened my banking tab. The balance stared back at me, full and untouched, every dollar tied to my name. I moved my cursor to transfer funds. 10 minutes later, 3 accounts were empty. 1 was clean, 1 was mine. Each confirmation email pinged like a quiet victory bell. Transaction complete. Transaction complete. Transaction complete. Martin texted again. Documents received. Sale process begins at 9 a.m. You'll get official confirmation from escrow by noon. I replied, "Understood. Don't stall." He wrote back instantly, "Wouldn't dare." The cursor blinked again on the blank screen, as if asking what came next. I stared at it, then whispered, "Now we wait." But waiting wasn't stillness. Waiting was motion in disguise. I opened a new folder on my desktop, Lake Estate Closure, dragged the agreement inside, locked it with a password, and shut the laptop. The sound of the hinge snapping shut felt like a gavel. I stood, smoothed the papers on the desk, and placed my husband's old fountain pen on top. The ink smudge on my thumb looked like blood, but darker, cleaner. I didn't wash it off. Some marks should stay. The first light of dawn pushed through the curtains, soft and slow, the kind of light that makes everything look forgiven, It wasn't forgiveness. It was the beginning of order. I took a breath, calm and measured. My hand rested on the briefcase that held the signed agreement, the real weapon. By breakfast, they'd still be laughing. By lunch, the house would belong to someone else. I locked the office door behind me and walked down the hall. I was already in the kitchen. The clock said 6:15. I hadn't slept. I didn't need to. I filled the kettle, waited for the slow hiss of water heating, and watched the frost melting off the glass. Outside, the yard looked calm. Too calm, like it had no idea what was coming. The coffee dripped, steady, rhythmic, the only sound in the house. I leaned against the counter, mug in hand, staring at the garden I'd planted 30 years ago. Every tree, every patch of soil, every rose bush had roots deeper than the people sleeping upstairs. The coffee tasted sharp and bitter. Perfect. Peace tastes better after chaos. From the driveway came the low hum of an engine. I turned my head. A white truck rolled in, small, discreet, the kind banks use for document transfers. 2 men stepped out in uniform, clipped movements, no questions. I opened the door before they rang. "Mrs. Lake?" one of them asked. "Yes." He handed me a clipboard. "From Cole & Associates. Pickup for signed property documents." I nodded. "They're ready." He followed me into the office. The papers sat on the desk, stacked and sealed in a brown envelope. My signature was still visible through the flap. He flipped through each page quickly, checking seals and stamps. "Everything's in order." "Of course it is." He smiled politely. "We'll deliver these to the bank before 9. I walked them to the door, watched as they climbed back into the truck, and waited until it disappeared down the street. The sound of the engine faded, replaced by the faint whistle of wind through the trees. Upstairs, the floor creaked. Someone was awake. Andrew, probably. Maybe Heather. They'd come down soon, expecting breakfast, conversation, normalcy. They'd find coffee, but not comfort. I rinsed the mug, wiped the counter, and turned off the light. The morning looked soft, peaceful, painted in gold. I almost smiled. Calm is deceptive. It isn't kindness. It's the pause between decisions. I stepped onto the porch, the air biting against my skin. The sun broke over the horizon, glowing off the frost-covered lawn like glass. Inside my coat pocket, my phone buzzed once. Martin's text. "Received by bank. Transaction initiated." I looked toward the upstairs window, where a shadow moved behind the curtain. Andrew, watching. He didn't know it yet, but this piece was his last. I sipped the final bit of coffee, now lukewarm, and whispered, "Enjoy the quiet while it lasts." Then I turned, locked the door, and walked toward the car. I was already halfway to town when it began. Back at the house, Andrew stumbled into the kitchen in his robe, yawning, scratching his head, completely unaware that his morning was about to end before it started. I wasn't there to see it, but I could picture it perfectly, because I planned it perfectly. The moment he unlocked his phone, the first notification popped up. Property sale agreement, confirmation of transfer. Subject line bright, bold, impossible to miss. He frowned, blinked, tapped it open. The words hit like a punch. Transfer completed. Escrow received. New ownership registered under pending entity, KL Holdings. Heather was at the counter, pouring coffee. "What's wrong?" He stared at the screen. "She sold it," he said, voice cracking. "She sold the damn house." Heather turned, confused. "Who did?" "My mother," he shouted. The mug in his hand slipped, crashed against the floor. Coffee splashed across his feet. She can't do that." Heather bent down to pick up the pieces, hands shaking. "You're overreacting. Maybe it's some mistake." "It's not a mistake." He scrolled furiously, eyes darting across every word. "Effective immediately. She even signed it last night. Look at this timestamp." Heather looked pale now. "What does that mean?" "It means," he said, breath ragged, "we don't live here anymore." She froze. "Andrew!" He slammed his phone on the table. "She can't sell it without my consent." "She just did," Heather whispered. He ran a hand through his hair, pacing like a caged animal. "She blindsided us. Everything's gone. The house, the money." He stopped mid-sentence, eyes wide. "The money!" He opened the banking app, fingers shaking. The numbers had changed. Balance slashed, joint account wiped clean. "No, no, no." He sank into the chair, face buried in his hands. Heather's voice broke. "What are we going to do?" He looked up, eyes hollow. "Find her. Right now." The phone buzzed again. Another email, this one from the bank. Transfer confirmation. Funds secured under beneficiary Catherine Lake. Heather covered her mouth. Andrew stared at the screen, unable to breathe. The silence that followed wasn't peace. It was the kind of silence that comes right before collapse. His coffee cooled beside the shards of the broken mug, untouched. The bank opened at 9. I was waiting at the door before the lights even flicked on. The teller looked startled when she saw me. Hair tied back, coat buttoned, briefcase in hand. I looked like every business client she'd ever trusted. That was the point. "Good morning, Mrs. Lake," she said, polite and sleepy. "Let's make it a productive one," I replied. She led me to the private counter. I placed my ID, account card, and transfer authorization on the desk. "I want a full withdrawal from my primary account. Certified bills only." Her fingers froze mid-keystroke. "Full amount, ma'am?" "Yes, every cent." She tried to smile. "That's quite a balance. May I ask the reason?" "You may," I said, sliding my pen across the counter. "I'm done financing my own disrespect." Her expression flickered between confusion and admiration. "Of course, Mrs. Lake. It'll take a few minutes." While she counted, I watched the digital numbers fall on the screen, millions shrinking into zero. The sound of the printer spitting receipts felt cleaner than any apology I'd ever heard. She handed me the paperwork, hands trembling slightly. "You'll need to sign here and here." I signed fast, no hesitation. Each stroke of ink felt like cutting a chain. 5 minutes later, she returned with a sealed envelope, thick, heavy, stamped with the bank's crest. She slid it toward me. "Please confirm receipt." I signed again. "Confirmed." When I lifted the envelope, the weight surprised me. It wasn't just cash, it was power, compressed into paper and control. The manager stepped out from his office, pretending not to stare. I nodded to him politely. "Don't worry. I'm not closing the account. I'm just reallocating priorities." He smiled nervously. Of course. I tucked the envelope into my bag, zipped it, and stood. "One last thing," I said to the teller. "If anyone asks, this transaction never needed permission. It was mine to begin with." She nodded quickly. "Yes, ma'am." Outside, the air was sharp and bright. Sunlight hit the marble steps, turning them white as glass. I paused for one breath, long enough to feel the shift. Inside that envelope was every ounce of control Andrew thought he owned. He was probably still yelling, still blaming, still trying to understand how fast the world could change when someone finally stopped waiting. By mid-morning, I was downtown, parked across from the law offices of Sloan and Pierce. I didn't go in. I didn't have to. The real show was already unfolding inside. Andrew had beaten me there. I could picture him pacing, jaw tight, voice raised, trying to buy back control with volume. Richard Sloan, the man who thought slick hair and expensive suits could bend the law, sat across from him, scrolling through the same document I'd signed hours ago. Andrew slammed his hand on the desk. "There has to be a way to stop this. She can't sell it without my consent." Richard adjusted his glasses. "Actually, she can." Andrew froze. "What?" Richard leaned back, cool as ice. "The deed lists her as the sole owner. No joint claim, no trust, no prenup connected to your late father's estate. Everything was transferred to her name 10 years ago." Andrew's voice cracked. "You're her lawyer. You helped with that paperwork." "Exactly," Richard said. "Which is why I can tell you, legally it's airtight. It's—" Heather sat in the corner, pale, twisting a napkin in her hand. "Can we appeal?" "Appeal what?" Richard asked. "A clean sale? There's nothing to appeal. She sold the property through a verified channel. The bank already released confirmation." Andrew shook his head, desperate. "There has to be something." Richard's tone flattened. "There's nothing. She outlawyered you." The silence that followed was almost satisfying, even from a distance. I imagined the way Andrew's face would harden, the same face that once smirked across my dinner table, sure I'd never fight back. Now the law, the very system he thought he could twist, had tied him to his own arrogance. Heather whispered, "So what happens now?" Richard folded his hands. "Now? You move out when escrow clears, and if you touch anything on that property, she can press charges." Andrew stared at him, speechless. Then he laughed, a dry, bitter sound. "She set this up. She planned this." Richard didn't even look up. "Of course she did!" The words hit him harder than I ever could. He grabbed his phone and stormed out, brushing past Heather without a glance. The door slammed. From my car across the street, I saw him burst onto the sidewalk, his face red, jaw clenched. He looked around like he was searching for someone to blame. He wouldn't find me. I was already 2 steps ahead. I started the engine, watching him pace in the rearview mirror. The sunlight caught on the glass of the law office behind him. Sharp, clean, final. The phone rang just as I pulled into the bakery's old parking lot. I didn't need to check the screen. I knew that number. Heather. I let it ring twice before answering. "Yes?" Her voice shook. "Catherine, please. You have to talk to Andrew. He's losing it." I kept my tone flat. "He's not losing anything. He's finally realizing what's his and what's mine." "He's your son," she pleaded. "You can't just erase that." "Not anymore," I said. "He made that clear last night." She went quiet. I could hear traffic in the background, the sound of someone crying. Sophie, maybe. "Please," Heather whispered. "He said things he didn't mean. You can't destroy your own family over words." "Words," I said, almost laughing. "Words are contracts, Heather. He signed his when he opened his mouth." "Catherine, I'm begging you. Beg for yourself," I cut in. "You stood there and watched him humiliate me. You smiled while he did it." "I didn't mean—" "Yes, you did," I said. "Because you needed a roof more than a conscience." Her breathing hitched. "So that's it? You're cutting us off?" Family ends where betrayal begins. Silence. Then a sob. I stared through the windshield, the reflection of my own face in the glass. Steady, calm, unrecognizable to the woman I was 2 nights ago. "You should pack," I said quietly. "By tomorrow, that house won't even remember your names." "Catherine, please!" Click. I ended the call. For a second, I just sat there, phone still in my hand. No guilt, no ache, just The message came through just as the clock hit noon. "Martin. Transfer done. Title change confirmed. Escrow closed." For a moment, I just watched the words on the screen. Every letter meant something final. Every click I'd made in the past 12 hours had led to this line. I typed back, "Good. File restraining order." A few seconds later, 3 dots blinked. Then his reply. "Already drafted. Sending now for signature." The document slid into my inbox with a soft ping. Protective order. Residential premises. Section 14B. 6 pages. All precision and law. The kind of barrier you can't argue with, can't shout through, can't guilt into softening. I opened it. Read the first line once. Then scrolled straight to the end. I didn't need persuasion. I needed closure. Signature field. Catherine Lake. Click. Signed. I exhaled slowly. That was the sound of a door locking, not the kind made of wood, but of law. The phone rang almost immediately. Martin's voice was brisk, clear. "All done on your end?" "Yes, what's next?" "I'll submit it to the county clerk within the hour," he said. "Once the judge signs, it's enforceable. If he shows up, even to talk, he's trespassing." "Good," I said. "Make it full. No visits, no calls, no doorstep drama." He chuckled under his breath. "You've already taught half my clients what boundaries look like." "Then make sure he learns the lesson too," I said. Martin paused. "You really want to go that far?" "I'm not going far," I replied. "I'm staying still. He's the one who crossed the line." He hesitated for a second, then said, "You know, Catherine, I've seen divorces, fraud cases, asset wars. But this is strategy. You used their own arrogance as leverage." "Paper beats pride," I said. "Every time," he agreed. We both went quiet. There was nothing left to explain. After the call, I opened my documents folder. The chain of proof filled the screen. Property sale agreement. Signed 12:43 a.m. Escrow confirmation 09:01 a.m. Restraining order pending signature. Court filing ID prepared 11:56 a.m. Each file was a chapter in the story of control. No yelling, no chaos, just signatures, dates, and irreversible order. I printed the restraining order confirmation, placed it next to the deed transfer, and smoothed the paper flat. The edges were still warm from the printer. This wasn't revenge anymore. It was administration. The kind of order men like Andrew never understood. Quiet, written, absolute. The light through the blinds landed right on my name, Catherine Lake. I traced it with one finger, the way people touch something sacred. I picked up the papers and slid them into a folder marked Lake Holdings, Private. Then I locked the drawer. Through the window, I could see the world moving as if nothing had changed. But it had. Everything had. I leaned back, finished my coffee, and whispered to the empty room, "Justice doesn't need noise, just proof." The phone buzzed again. Martin's final text appeared. Filed, stamped, effective immediately. The pounding started just after dusk. 3 hard knocks, then a voice I knew too well. "Open up! I know you're in there!" I didn't move. The lights were off, curtains drawn. I sipped my coffee, slow and deliberate, listening to him pound again. "Catherine, you think you can just erase me? This is my house!" I set the cup down and walked toward the door. The hallway light spilled a narrow beam across the floor, catching the edge of the brass handle. My pulse didn't rise. My steps didn't quicken. Control has a rhythm, and I'd found mine. Another slam shook the door. "Open up, Mom!" I unlocked the deadbolt, not to let him in, just to make sure he heard the click. Then I spoke, voice steady. "This door only opens for respect." He froze. "What?" "You lost the key the moment you raised your voice at me," I said. "Now you can stand out there and listen to what that sounds like." He cursed, pounding harder. "You can't lock me out. You can't do this to your own son." "Correction," I said through the door. "You did it to yourself." I reached for my phone, opened Martin's last message, and pressed play on the voicemail he'd left earlier that afternoon. His voice carried clearly through the speaker. "Restraining order filed. Effective immediately. He steps on your porch. You call the police." I held the phone near the door so Andrew could hear. The banging stopped. For a few seconds, there was only silence. Then his voice dropped, quieter but shaking. "You wouldn't." "I already did," I said. He muttered something I didn't catch, then kicked the door one last time. The impact echoed down the porch like thunder that didn't know where to land. I stepped closer, close enough to see his shadow through the curtain. "You used to think I'd never fight back," I said softly. "Now you're learning how wrong you were." He didn't answer. I could hear him breathing, heavy, uneven, trapped between fury and fear. "Go home, Andrew," I said, "before this house stops being the only thing that still remembers your name." He stood there another moment, then finally stepped away. The sound of his car door slamming broke the stillness. Engine roaring, tires screeching. I waited until the noise faded down the street. Then I relocked the deadbolt, each click like punctuation. I whispered to the quiet hallway, "This door only opens for respect." They arrived 12 minutes later. 2 officers, calm and polite, headlights sweeping across the front yard like slow searchlights. I was already waiting at the doorway when they stepped out of the cruiser. "Evening, ma'am," one of them said, a tall man with a steady voice. "We received a noise complaint, possible disturbance, same address as a restraining order recently filed under your name. You Catherine Lake?" "Yes," I said, "and you'll find everything you need right here." I handed him a folder, printed copy of the court order, time-stamped less than 5 hours old. The other officer glanced around the porch, flashlight cutting across the railing where Andrew's shoe had scuffed the paint. "He was here?" "He left about 10 minutes ago," I said. "You'll probably find his tire marks still fresh." The officer flipped through the documents, nodding slowly. "This is solid. Full perimeter protection, no contact allowed, signed by Judge Branson." "Filed today," I said. "He was notified by email this afternoon." The second officer looked at me carefully. "He tried to force entry?" "He knocked," I said, repeatedly, yelled, demanded ownership, then he threatened to come back. "Did he make physical contact with the property?" I pointed to the dent on the lower panel of the door. "That's where he kicked." They exchanged a glance. "All right, ma'am. We'll file an incident report. Note violation of the order. If he returns, call us immediately. You did the right thing, kept the door closed, didn't engage." "I learned that lesson," I said. "You don't argue with chaos. You document it." The tall officer smiled faintly. "Wish more people understood that." He pulled out a clipboard, had me sign the bottom of the report. The pen was cold against my fingers, but my hand didn't shake. Not once. As they packed up, the younger officer said, "Just so you know, this kind of case, most folks don't have their paperwork this clean." I met his eyes. "The law's on my side," I said. "I raised it myself." He nodded, respectful now. "We'll make sure he gets the message." When their car pulled away, the red and blue lights flashed across the house one last time, color washing over the walls, the same walls that no longer belonged to Andrew Lake. I closed the door gently and leaned against it, breathing steady. The echo of their engine faded down the street, leaving only quiet. For years, I'd built a family around emotion, love, guilt, forgiveness. Tonight, I rebuilt my life around proof. The locksmith arrived before sunrise, a small man with a gray beard and a tool bag that looked heavier than he was. He didn't ask questions. Professionals never do. "Mrs. Lake," he said, "you called for a full replacement?" "Yes," I answered, holding the front door open. "Change every lock, front, back, garage. Make it digital. I like proof." He nodded, already unpacking his tools. The sound of metal hitting the floor was sharp and clean, like punctuation marks in the silence. While he worked, I stood in the doorway, watching him dismantle the old brass locks, one screw at a time, quiet, precise. Each click was a goodbye to the years I'd wasted letting people come and go without consequence. He tested the new keypad, light blinking green, then blue. "You'll get alerts on your phone each time it's used," he explained. "Entry logs, timestamps, access codes. You can even lock it remotely." "Perfect," I said. "I've had enough surprises." He smiled. "A lot of folks switching to these lately. Makes life simpler." "No," I said. "It makes life honest." He didn't respond, but I caught the way he looked at me. Half respect, half curiosity. He didn't need to know the story. The broken lock on the porch already told it. He moved to the back door, humming softly while he worked. I made coffee and brought him a cup. "Strong?" he asked, smiling. "Always." 30 minutes later, he straightened up and dusted his hands. "All set, ma'am. Every entry secured. You'll find the Access app pre-installed on your phone." I checked the screen. 3 connected locks, each marked active. The quiet notification tone chimed, neat and final. "How much?" I asked. He gave me the total. I counted the bills from the envelope I'd withdrawn the day before and handed them to him, crisp, deliberate, exact. He pocketed the cash, then looked back at the door. "Feels good when something finally closes right, doesn't it?" I met his eyes. "Feels better when it stays that way." When he drove off, I stood on the porch and tapped the new keypad for the first time. The lock clicked, sealed tight. Behind me, the house was silent, secured, mine in every legal and physical sense. By noon, the neighborhood was quiet, until his car tore down the street like a warning. I saw the black sedan stop hard at the gate, gravel sprayed across the driveway. Andrew jumped out before the engine stopped. His shirt was half-buttoned, hair wild, eyes red from a night without sleep. He slammed both hands on the iron bars and shouted, "Open the gate, Mom!" I stood just inside the porch, calm, still holding my coffee. "No!" He shook the gate like a cage. "You think you can lock me out? This is my house." "This was your tantrum," I said. "Now it's my property." He pointed at the house. "You can't sell what's mine." "I didn't," I said. "I sold what I built." He kicked the gate. The clang echoed down the street. Curtains moved in the neighboring houses. People started peeking through their windows. "Don't make a scene, Andrew," I said, voice level. He laughed bitterly. "You ruined my life. You stole everything." I pressed a button on my phone. The gate's speaker crackled. My voice came through the loudspeaker, clear and amplified. "Smile, Andrew. The neighborhood's watching justice." His face turned white. "You wouldn't dare." "I already did." He froze, realizing every word was echoing out into the quiet street. I continued, calm but cutting. "You said life would be better without me. Consider this your wish granted." Someone across the road started filming with a phone. Another neighbor stepped outside, pretending to sweep the porch just to get a better view. Andrew kicked the gate again. "You're insane." "No," I said. "I'm legal. There's a difference." He shouted, "Turn off that damn speaker." "Why? You finally have an audience," I said. "It's the only time your lies might sound true." He grabbed the bars tighter, shaking them until the veins on his arms bulged. "Let me in." "Not a chance," I said. "This gate only opens for respect and the law." The word law hit him like a slap. He stopped, chest heaving, face burning with rage. Heather's car appeared at the end of the street, pulling in slowly. She stepped out pale, terrified, her eyes darting between us and the crowd forming nearby. I turned off the speaker and looked straight at her. "Come collect what's left of your husband's dignity," I said. She didn't move. Andrew spun toward her. "Tell her she can't do this." Heather's voice was small. "She already did." He stared at her, disbelief flooding his face. I walked closer to the gate, just enough for him to see his reflection in the iron. "You wanted me gone, Andrew. Now you're the one outside." He opened his mouth, but nothing came out. Behind him, two neighbors clapped, quiet, uneasy applause, but enough. The humiliation was complete. I turned and walked back to the porch, leaving him screaming into the wind. Every neighborhood remembers its loudest moments. This one would remember mine. Heather stood on the edge of the driveway, one hand gripping the car door, the other clutching her daughter's backpack. Her face was pale, makeup smeared from tears she hadn't bothered to wipe. The air was heavy, filled with Andrew's shouting and the murmurs of neighbors still watching from their porches. She turned once toward the house, then back to me. "Catherine," she said quietly, "I never wanted it to go this far." I didn't answer. Andrew spun toward her, red-faced. "Don't talk to her! Get back here!" Heather didn't move. "I can't!" He stepped forward. "You're my wife!" She shook her head. "I'm Sophie's mother first." The little girl peeked out from the car, clutching her rabbit. "Mommy, can we go home?" Heather's voice cracked. "We don't have a home, sweetheart. Not anymore." Andrew slammed his hand against the gate. "This isn't over!" Heather turned on him, voice sharp for the first time. "Yes, it is. You did this. Every word you shouted, every insult, every lie, you built this moment." He took a step back, shocked. "You're blaming me?" "You humiliated your own mother in front of your child," she said, "and you think there's still something left to save?" He reached for her arm, desperate. "Heather, please, don't do this." She jerked free. "You can't grab what's already gone." I spoke quietly from the porch. "Let her go, Andrew." He turned on me, fury blazing. "You shut up." I didn't. "You wanted freedom? There it is, walking away from you." Heather opened the car door. "Get in, Sophie." The child climbed in, silent, watching her father through the glass. Andrew's voice cracked. "You're leaving me?" Heather stared at him, eyes empty. You left us first. You just didn't notice. He lunged toward the car, but I pressed the gate remote before he reached it. The iron bars slid shut between us with a metallic clang that cut his words in half. Heather got behind the wheel, started the engine. She didn't look back. The car rolled forward, slow and steady, until it disappeared down the street. Andrew stood frozen, breath ragged, hands pressed to the bars. "You think you've won?" he shouted. I met his eyes. "No. You just lost everything that was still worth keeping." He backed away, shaking his head, speechless. When the street went silent again, I turned and walked inside, closing the door behind me. For the first time, his silence sounded like defeat. The street was empty now, quiet, washed in gray. I stood behind the curtain, one hand on the window frame, watching him. Andrew was still there, alone. His hair hung damp against his forehead, shirt half untucked, sleeves rolled to his elbows like he'd been fighting ghosts. His voice had cracked so many times it was barely human anymore. He started walking down the driveway, pacing, muttering words I couldn't hear. Then he stopped, looked back toward the corner where Heather's car had disappeared, and something in him just broke. He shouted her name, once, twice. Nothing. The sound died against the brick walls. Then he shouted mine. "Mom, please don't do this!" I didn't move. I kept watching from the window, the curtain barely open, just enough to see him unravel. He stumbled closer to the gate, gripping the iron bars with both hands. "You got what you wanted! You win! Is that what you wanted?" My voice stayed in my chest. The only sound inside was the ticking of the clock behind me, steady and merciless. He dropped to his knees on the gravel. "Mom, please, I can't fix this if you don't help me." Fix what? The mess he built? The trust he burned? The house he thought would protect him forever? He hit the gate again. "Say something!" I said nothing. Silence is stronger than argument. He kept yelling, voice rising and cracking, words tumbling over each other until they stopped meaning anything. I watched him grab at his hair, at the dirt, at the bars. Like the harder he held on, the more the world might stop falling apart. He shouted again, "You're still my mother!" For a long second, I almost answered. Then I remembered the dinner table, the wine glass, the way he'd slammed his hand down and said he wished I were gone. Wishes come true, especially when you mean them. He screamed again, but it was softer now, desperate instead of angry. "Please," he said, "just tell me what to do." Oh. I let the silence stretch until it swallowed everything. Then I whispered, just to myself, "You listen." He couldn't hear me, but I didn't need him to. He stood up, shaky, lost, staring at the locked door like a child staring at an old wound. Then he pounded the gate one last time, a hollow thud that sounded more like surrender than rage. I closed the curtain slowly, the fabric sliding together until he disappeared from view. He screamed one more time, a sound between a plea and a curse. It didn't reach me. I turned away, walked back toward the kitchen, and poured myself another cup of coffee. My hand was steady. My heart was quiet. Outside, his footsteps faded, each one softer than the last, until the only thing left was stillness. He screamed. I closed. The house was still, stripped bare of everything that ever carried warmth. The air smelled like dust and endings. I walked through each room slowly, checking drawers, cupboards, closets. Nothing left but silence. When I reached the dining room, I stopped. The table stood in the center, empty except for a single pen. The same table where he'd once slammed his hand down and said, "I wish you weren't here." That wish had finally come true. I opened my bag and took out a cream-colored envelope. Heavy paper, clean fold. I placed it on the table and sat down across from it, as if it were waiting for conversation. I wrote his name slowly, neatly, Andrew Lake, then stared at the blank space beneath it. What could I possibly say to a man who had already said everything cruel? What could be left that mattered? The truth, I decided. Just the truth. On a single sheet of paper, I wrote, "You said life's better without me. Agreed." 7 words. Sharp, final, undeniable. Then I opened my folder, pulled out 3 withdrawal receipts. Each one was stamped with today's date, each amount precise to the cent. The balances were zeros, accounts closed, every dollar accounted for, every door shut, no signature needed. My handwriting was enough. I folded the receipts, slid them inside the envelope, then pressed the flap shut. The glue stuck instantly, sealing not just paper, but years of exhaustion. When I lifted it, I was surprised at how light it felt. Power, it turns out, doesn't weigh much once it's earned. I placed the envelope in the center of the table, straight, deliberate. The light from the window fell across it, tracing my name like a verdict. He'd find it soon enough. He'd walk into this room, probably still shouting, still angry, still believing he could fix what was already finished. He'd see the envelope. He'd tear it open. He'd read those 7 words and feel everything I refused to say out loud. Inside, he'd find the receipts, the quiet proof that the empire he thought he ruled was never his to begin with. No yelling, no fight, no blood. Just numbers that told the story better than I ever could. I stood up, pushed the chair in, and looked around one last time. The walls echoed faintly with the sound of the past, but there was nothing left here for me. I touched the table, not with affection, but confirmation. The wood was cool, final. Then I whispered to the air, "Consider this the last thing I'll ever give you." I turned, walked to the front door, and paused long enough to hear my heels on the hardwood, measured, steady, certain. Outside, the wind caught the edge of the porch light and flickered once, like the house itself was exhaling. I locked the door and stepped into the quiet street. Behind me, that envelope waited, light as paper, heavy as truth. The kind of goodbye that doesn't need a witness. He'd scream when he saw it. He'd search for someone to blame. But when the shock settled, he'd realize I hadn't taken revenge. I'd just removed myself. The next morning broke clean and cold. I was already awake before sunrise, sitting at my desk with a folder open and a cup of coffee cooling beside me. The world was quiet, but the kind of quiet that comes before a verdict. My laptop chimed. New email. Sender, Martin Cole. Subject line, complaint filed. Andrew Lake, v. Civil fraud. Section 32B. I clicked. The document loaded slowly, line by line, like the final credits of a long, exhausting movie. 32 pages, attached evidence, bank logs, forged signatures, fund transfers. Every transaction Andrew had made in my name, every cent he moved from family trust accounts to his personal ventures. He'd called them temporary reallocations. The state called it fraudulent appropriation. I read the opening line twice. Filed under Charleston County Court. Plaintiff, Catherine Lake. Defendant, Andrew Lake. I let the words sink in. Then I smiled. I dialed Martin. He answered immediately. Morning, Catherine. You saw the file? I did, I said. You were right. The paper trail speaks louder than he ever did. It always does, he said. I could hear the shuffle of papers in the background. We've already submitted evidence of misrepresentation. The bank confirmed his unauthorized transfers. The IRS liaison said it's enough to trigger an audit. Perfect, I said. He wanted to live like a man above the law. Now he can meet it face to face. Martin exhaled slowly. You're officially listed as the plaintiff. No mediator, no settlement. Are you sure you want to proceed this way? Absolutely. Quiet deals protect men like him. I'm not here for quiet. He paused. Understood. The restraining order keeps him off your property, but once the summons goes out, he'll try to contact you. Don't engage. I won't, I said. That door closed a long time ago. He chuckled softly. You know, Catherine, most people sound nervous when their lawsuit hits the system. You sound satisfied. Because I am, I said. It's not revenge, it's record-keeping. He laughed quietly. I'll never forget that line. Anything else you want on the filing notes? Yes, I said. Make sure the complaint date reads December 25th. There was a pause. Christmas Day? Yes, I said. Justice has no holidays. He chuckled, low and admiring. You always know how to leave a mark. Not a mark, I corrected. A lesson. After we hung up, I printed the first page and laid it on the table beside the envelope I'd left for Andrew the night before. 2 pieces of paper, 2 truths. 1 emotional, 1 legal, both irreversible. I skimmed the first paragraph again. The plaintiff alleges deliberate fraud, property manipulation, and financial coercion. Every word was a mirror reflecting his choices. I imagined his morning. The knock on the door, the officer handing him the envelope stamped Charleston County Court, his confusion turning into panic, his mouth opening to argue, but no one listening. For years he used my name to cover his debts, my patience to shield his mistakes. Now my name was the one filing against him. Outside, sunlight crept through the blinds and stretched across the page, landing squarely on my signature, Catherine Lake. I took 1 slow sip of coffee. It was lukewarm now, bitter, strong. The taste of victory is never sweet. It's clean. I placed the page in a folder labeled Case File 24B, Lake v. Lake. Then I slid it into the cabinet right beside the property deed and restraining order. 3 documents, 3 chapters, house, boundary, law. He thought the story ended with a slammed door. He was wrong. The ending comes with a seal and a case number. I leaned back in the chair and whispered to the quiet room, "Merry Christmas, Andrew." By late afternoon, I heard the first crash against the gate, metal on metal. A wild voice followed. "You ruined me!" It was Andrew, hoarse, furious, shaking the iron bars like a madman. I stepped onto the porch, remote in one hand, phone in the other. I didn't say a word yet. "You hear me?" he shouted. "You took everything. The house, the money, my reputation. You destroyed your own son." I pressed the gate control. The motor whirred, opening the gate, not for him, but for the moving truck pulling out of the driveway behind me. 2 men in company uniforms carried the last of the boxes labeled Property of KL Holdings. They didn't look at him. They just loaded, sealed, and drove away. The entire street fell silent except for the hum of that truck. The logo on the side gleamed under the sun. Cole Logistics, authorized transfer. Andrew froze as the truck passed him, heading for the corner. "What is this?" "This," I said, my voice amplified through the outdoor speaker, "is what happens when words become contracts." He looked at me, face blotched red, eyes frantic. "You can't just erase me like this." "No," I said. "I didn't erase you. I cleaned up." He stumbled forward, but the gate stopped him. This is insane. You're sick." "No," I said. "I'm documented." He hit the bars with his fists. "Everyone will know what you did." I tilted my head slightly. "They already do." Across the street, 3 neighbors had come out. One of them, a teenager, was holding up his phone, recording. Another whispered something, shaking her head. The sound of a second phone camera clicking joined the first. Andrew noticed. "Stop filming," he barked. "This is private." "It's public now," I said. "You made it that way when you screamed my name at Christmas dinner." He turned toward me again. "You'll regret this." "I don't do regret," I said. "I do receipts." The crowd grew, 3 more neighbors, then 5. A car slowed at the curb, window rolled down. Someone murmured, "That's the Lake boy, isn't it?" I leaned closer to the speaker. "Smile, Andrew. They're getting your good side this time." He roared, gripping the bars tighter, face twisted, tears cutting through the dirt on his cheeks. "You can't just watch me fall." "I can," I said. "It's called accountability." He fell to his knees, voice cracking. "I'm your son." "You stopped being my son the moment you treated me like a stranger," I said, calm and flat. "Now the world's just meeting you for who you really are." The silence that followed was deafening. Just the hum of the moving truck fading down the street and the quiet mechanical click of the gate beginning to close again. I pressed the button. The motor buzzed, the iron slowly sliding shut. Andrew slapped the bars, shouting, "Don't you walk away from me!" I didn't answer. I turned, walked back up the steps, and paused at the top. The crowd had their phones out. Every lens pointed his way. Before I stepped inside, I looked back once. "You wanted an audience," I said. "Now you have one." Then the door closed behind me. From the living room window, I could see him still kneeling, still screaming, still trying to fight a battle that ended before it began. I whispered, mostly to myself, peace never needed permission. He was still there when I stepped back outside. The sky had turned the color of iron, gray, heavy, ready to break. Andrew stood at the gate, hands shaking, face streaked with anger and tears. When he saw me, he ran forward, grabbed the bars, and shouted, "We're not done! You can't just walk away from your own blood!" I pressed the gate control. It opened halfway, slow and mechanical. He stumbled in before it finished, tripping on the gravel. For the first time in years, we stood within arm's reach. No distance, no metal between us, just history, and the end of it. He moved closer, voice breaking. "Please, Mom, just listen to me." I stopped him cold. "You had your turn to talk, I had mine to listen, and now it's silence's turn." He grabbed my wrist, hard, the same hand he once held when he was 5 years old and scared of thunderstorms. "Don't do this," he begged. "I'm still your son." I looked straight into his eyes, steady, unflinching. "You were my son till you sold your name." Then I pulled my hand free and slapped him. The sound cracked through the air like thunder. The entire street went still. Neighbors froze mid-step. Even the wind stopped for a heartbeat. He staggered back, one hand to his cheek, eyes wide with disbelief. "You hit me," he whispered. "No," I said. "I ended you." I took my phone from my pocket and hit the speaker button. Martin's voice came through loud and clear, echoing down the street. "All done, Catherine. Accounts frozen, assets secured. He's officially locked out of everything." I held the phone up so everyone could hear. "Thank you, Martin." Andrew looked around wildly. You're broadcasting this?" I nodded. "You humiliated me in front of everyone. I'm just returning the favor." He lunged forward, but stopped when 2 neighbors stepped out from their driveway. One of them raised a phone. "You should leave," the man said quietly. Andrew's voice cracked. "You're all watching this? You think she's right?" No one answered. Cameras clicked. He turned back to me, eyes wild, pleading, "Please, Mom, don't do this." I took one step closer, close enough for him to see that there was no hatred left, just truth. "You keep calling me Mom, but you stopped earning that word a long time ago." His breath hitched. He looked down, trembling, whispering, "I just wanted—" "To win?" I cut in. "You already did. You won your freedom. You just didn't like the cost." He fell silent, shoulders shaking. The street was full of witnesses, but no one spoke. Only the phone in my hand still hummed faintly, with Martin's voice repeating, "Assets secured." I lowered it, turned away, and said quietly, "Case closed." Behind me he tried to speak, but the words died in his throat. I walked toward the car, every step deliberate. Before opening the door, I looked back one last time. "You wanted power," I said. "Now you've met it." Then I got in, started the engine, and let the tires roll over the gravel where he'd been kneeling minutes ago. 3 days later, Charleston smelled like cinnamon again. The morning news looped the same clip that had burned its way across every screen in the country. Me standing at my gate, calm, unflinching, while my son screamed until his voice cracked. The caption below read, #JusticeMom, the woman who walked away and won. I never planned to trend. I just refused to lose. I poured coffee behind the counter of my newly reopened Sweet Magnolia Bakery, the same one I built 20 years ago, now restored with every dollar I'd taken back. The air buzzed with quiet pride and the faint hum of the ovens. The walls smelled like butter, sugar, and freedom. Emily pushed through the door, balancing a tray of golden apple pies. "They're lined up around the block," she said. "Some of them aren't even here for pastries. They're here for you." I arched an eyebrow. "They'd better be hungry then." She laughed. "Mom, you're viral. CNN called. And a talk show host wants you next week. You're trending on Twitter, TikTok, everywhere." "I'm 67, Emily. I said, sliding another tray into the display. "I don't even know what half those things mean." "It means people finally saw what you did, and they love it." Outside, through the glass, a crowd gathered around the window. A woman in her 50s waved, mouthing, "Thank you." A younger man raised his phone and whispered to someone beside him, "That's her, the one who said, 'I cleaned up.'" I didn't wave back. I just adjusted the cash drawer and said, "If they want to see strength, let them see it working." Emily smiled. "You're trending under 2 hashtags, #JusticeMom and #SweetMagnoliaRise. "Fitting," I said. "Justice and sugar, both best served hot." The bell over the door rang. The first customer, a gray-haired man with kind eyes, stepped in holding a folded newspaper. On the front page, "Charleston mother legally outsmarts son in viral family feud." And he looked at me and said, "You showed the rest of us how to stand tall, ma'am. I lost everything to my own kids. Wish I'd had your nerve." I handed him a warm croissant. "Nerve is free," I said. "You just have to stop apologizing for it." He smiled, dropped a 20 in the jar, and walked out without waiting for change. I watched the door close and caught my reflection in the glass. The woman staring back wasn't the same one who left that Christmas dinner. Her eyes were still sharp, but lighter, like someone who had traded rage for control. Emily leaned on the counter beside me. "You realize, right? You turned revenge into a brand." "I didn't sell revenge," I said. "I sold proof that peace pays better." She laughed, shaking her head. "Still sounds like marketing to me." I took a breath, looking around the bakery, the new countertops, the restored shelves, the jars filled with pralines and jam. "Everything I loved once got taken from me," I said. "Now every inch of this place is proof that taking it back didn't require hate." The news on TV replayed the footage one more time. The reporter's voice echoed. "Local woman Catherine Lake becomes a symbol of empowerment after legally dismantling her son's financial control. Viewers call her an icon of silent strength." Emily muted the volume and grinned. "You're officially America's favorite grandma." I shook my head. "No, sweetheart. I'm just a woman who finally stopped being quiet." She placed a fresh pie on the counter beside me. "Still smells like Christmas." "Good," I said. "That's when it all started. Feels right it ends here." Outside, the light turned golden, flooding through the window and across the words painted on the glass. "Sweet Magnolia Bakery. Built on peace. Paid in full." I flipped the sign to open. The bell chimed, the crowd moved forward, and the scent of warm apple filled the street. Justice had become more than a moment. It had become a business. And this time, every profit came from dignity. It was late afternoon when the doorbell chimed, long after the lunch crowd had gone. The bakery was quiet, sunlight spilling through the window onto the counter. I was wiping down the glass display when I heard it, a slow, hesitant step. Then a voice. "Mom!" I didn't have to look up to know who it was. The silence between syllables was familiar, heavy, almost trembling. I kept cleaning. "We're open to customers," I said. "Not ghosts." Andrew took another step closer. His reflection appeared in the glass, thinner, pale, worn down. His expensive jacket hung loose, his eyes hollow. "I just wanted to talk." "You did," I said flatly. "At Christmas dinner. You said plenty." He swallowed hard. "I didn't mean it. I was angry. Everything's falling apart, Mom. The accounts are frozen. Heather left. I can't even afford my own lawyer anymore." I didn't look up. I reached for a box and started lining it with wax paper. "Actions have invoices," I said. "Yours just arrived. It's just—" "Please," he said, voice cracking. "Can we start over?" I met his eyes for the first time. Calm, cold, unshaken. "You had your say at dinner," I said. "This is my response." I took a fresh apple tart from the display case and set it on the counter. He stared at it, confused. $2.50, I said. He blinked. "What?" "You came into my store. You want something? You pay for it like everyone else." He reached for his wallet, fumbling with shaking hands. A few crumpled bills fell onto the counter. I didn't touch them until he stepped back. Then I rang it up, slid the small white box toward him and said, "Enjoy your purchase." His eyes glistened. "That's it? After everything? You're really done?" "Yes," I said, "completely." He held the box against his chest like it weighed more than gold. "I don't deserve forgiveness, I know that. But I still hoped you'd—" "Forgive?" I cut him off. "Forgiveness isn't my currency anymore. Accountability is." He stood there, shaking, searching for some crack in my resolve. There wasn't one. I stepped closer, my voice low and final. "You wanted me gone. I granted your wish. Now you're standing in the life that replaced you. Congratulations." His lip trembled. "You really hate me that much?" I shook my head. "No, Andrew. Hate would mean I still cared enough to feel it." He looked down at the pie box in his hands. "I don't even know who you are anymore." "That's because you never bothered to look," I said. "Now, if you'll excuse me, there are people waiting who didn't tell their mothers to disappear." The doorbell rang again, another customer entering. I turned toward the sound, already moving back behind the counter. Andrew hesitated, then finally stepped aside. He opened the door, but before leaving, he whispered, "I miss you." I didn't answer. I just called over the next customer's shoulder, "Welcome to Sweet Magnolia. What can I get you today?" The bell chimed as the door closed behind him. When I glanced up, I saw him through the window, standing on the sidewalk, clutching that small white box like a confession no one wanted. Then he walked away without looking back. 1 year later, Christmas morning returned, bright, cool, and quiet. No shouting, no slammed doors, no broken dinner tables, just the low hum of ovens and the smell of cinnamon filling the air. Sweet Magnolia Bakery was busier than ever. The line stretched out the door, the chatter soft and cheerful, the kind of peace that didn't need effort to keep. I moved behind the counter with a tray of warm pecan pies, each one dusted with powdered sugar like new snow. The bell above the door jingled. Emily was helping customers, her sleeves rolled up, a streak of flour on her cheek. And in the middle of the crowd, I spotted Sophie, 8 years old now, one braid falling loose, holding a cup of hot cocoa too big for her hands. She ran up to me, her smile lighting up the room. "Grandma, can I help?" I laughed softly. "You already are, sweetheart. You're the reason this place smells like happiness again." She leaned closer, lowering her voice. "Daddy said he saw your bakery on TV. He said you're famous." I paused for half a second, then nodded. "Maybe, but I'd rather be free than famous." She tilted her head. "Free means you don't have to say sorry all the time, right?" "Exactly," I said. "Free means you wake up and no one's shouting over your piece." She grinned and held out a sugar cookie shaped like a star. "Then this one's for you." I bent down to take it, the warmth of her little hand pressing against mine. "Thank you, baby. It's perfect." Behind us, the crowd grew louder. Someone was humming a carol. Another customer said, "That's her, the Justice Mom lady." Emily rolled her eyes, smiling. "Still trending, Mom?" I shook my head. "Justice isn't a trend. It's a habit." She laughed, turning back to the register. "A habit that pays rent." The TV above the counter played a news segment. A year later, the woman who redefined family justice. A reporter was saying Catherine Lake, known for her viral confrontation, has turned her story into a local success. Sweet Magnolia Bakery now donates a portion of its profits to legal aid for women rebuilding their lives. I lowered the volume. I didn't need to hear it again. Justice wasn't about noise. It was about building something solid where betrayal used to live. Sophie tugged my apron. "Grandma?" "Yes, honey?" She looked up at the tree in the corner, blinking lights dancing across her eyes. "What did you wish for this year?" I smiled, setting down the tray. "Peace," I said, "and speed." "Speed?" she giggled. "That's a funny wish." "Not really," I said. "Peace takes work, and sometimes you have to move fast before regret catches you." She nodded, pretending to understand, and hugged me around the waist. "I love you, Grandma." "I love you too," I said, kissing her forehead. The timer dinged. Another batch ready. I handed her the oven mitts. "You want to help me pull these out?" She nodded eagerly, and together we lifted the tray, golden crusts steaming under the warm lights. Outside, the glass windows glowed with soft reflection. The street shimmered with garlands, carolers, and laughter. Inside, every surface gleamed, rebuilt, renewed, at peace. As I placed the new pies on display, I caught my reflection in the glass again. This time, there was no trace of anger left, only calm, steady light. Peace had finally arrived, not as a wish, but as an inheritance. For the first time in years, Christmas felt exactly as it should: quiet, honest, earned. And when Sophie whispered, "Merry Christmas, Grandma," I smiled and whispered back, "Merry Christmas, sweetheart. Justice tastes sweet, doesn't it?" She nodded, and laughter filled the bakery like music. Outside, a banner fluttered under the winter sun. Sweet Magnolia Bakery. Built on peace, paid in full. Justice wasn't a moment anymore. It was legacy.